Hi, and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Brendan. Today's episode, I thought we'd talk about, with the summer coming to an end, that there are some parents and grandparents who have kids and grandkids who are just finishing up their summer jobs and either getting ready to go back to school, go back to college, or whatnot, and have made a few hundred or even a few $1,000s over the summer doing a job. This presents a pretty neat opportunity for the kids when it comes to investing, and more specifically, investing in retirement accounts. So yes, even if they're 16 years old, if they made an income, get a paycheck, and ultimately will get a W-2 at the end of the year, then they're eligible to contribute to a traditional or even a Roth IRA. And for most of these kids, I would strongly recommend a Roth IRA for a number of reasons, but and we'll get into those reasons in a moment. But first and foremost, let's get a little bit of a background on IRAs versus Roth IRAs. So that's one of the main questions I get from clients, and it's a pretty important thing to know about. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time during this episode actually talking about it. So on the left is Roth IRA, on the right is traditional IRA. And the big thing here is Roth IRAs are made with after-tax dollars. What that pretty much means is when you make a contribution, you have to make it with dollars that you cannot get a deduction on. So there's no benefit today to investing in a Roth IRA. Whereas a traditional IRA is almost the exact opposite. You actually do get a tax deduction for making a contribution to a traditional IRA. So why am I saying that these kids and grandkids that have summer jobs should be looking more at the Roth IRA versus the traditional IRA? The big reason is that whatever the kids invest, or when they put their money in, they probably don't have a ton of money. And up until right around $10,000, they don't have to pay tax on that money. So if they only make, let's say, $6,000 over a summer, they don't have to pay tax on that in most cases. Of course, if they have investment income from investments that they have, whether it's UTMA accounts or they, maybe they were a child actor and they actually do have a ton of money. But long story short, most kids won't have any taxes to pay, and therefore the traditional IRA is not so important because, what is a deduction? A deduction is reducing your income so that you pay less in taxes. Well, if you're already paying zero, the benefit of the traditional IRA kind of goes out the window. So what do you get if we're not looking at the contribution piece? Then where is the big benefit? Big benefit is with a Roth IRA, all of the earnings that child makes on that money grow tax-free. And if they're 16 years old, and my goodness, if they got a $6,000 summer job, they could make a contribution of up to $6,000. That's the upper limit to the maximum that they can put into a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. They don't get a tax deduction, but if you look at the traditional IRA, you don't really get a tax deduction either, because the kids are ultimately not going to be paying any taxes. But what you do get is tax-free growth with the Roth IRA. And with the traditional IRA, it's tax deferred. What does that mean, and why did they seem very similar, but there's a very big difference. A tax-free Roth IRA truly is tax-free. So if you put $6,000 in and it grows to $60,000, then that $54,000 of growth is tax-free, versus the traditional IRA where you put $6,000 in and maybe it grows to $60,000. When they ultimately take the money out, that entire $60,000 that account is made up of is taxable. And it's taxable at whatever their tax bracket is when they actually start taking money out. So long story short, when a child is making money, they should be making contributions to their Roth IRA or to a retirement account. And as I've mentioned earlier, I would strongly recommend the Roth IRA. There are a couple other big benefits to a Roth IRA, one of which is that, yes, down in the early withdrawal penalties and all this stuff here, you do see that there are penalties to taking money out before age 59 and a half, except for Roth IRA contributions. Roth IRA contributions can be taken out at any time, penalty-free and tax-free. So if you put in $6,000, it grows to $8,000. You can take back that $6,000, but you do have to keep in the $2,000 of growth. So this one's a nice, short, sweet coffee with Brendan. That's my big takeaway from this, is that if a child does make money, there are a number of planning opportunities that you have that you should definitely take advantage of. Another thing that you may do, if you have some extra money and you give a child or grandchild, let's say $1,000 at Christmas, instead of just giving them a check for $10,000, if they had $1,000 of income, you could actually take that $1,000 and help them open up a Roth IRA and put that $1,000 that you normally would give them at Christmas time or holiday time, sorry, and put that into a Roth IRA. And what does that do? Of course, what we just talked about, grows tax-free, and who knows, maybe it'll grow to some big number. But on the flip side, you also are teaching them a little bit about investing, which I think everyone should learn a little bit more about as early as possible, and get them invested in some good, blue chip type companies. I can't mention any companies on this without my compliance department getting upset with me, but think about some of the household names that everyone uses, and it'd be interesting for a child to learn a little bit more about some of the companies that they do business with on a day-to-day basis with their mobile phones, or with their the different subscriptions that they have for movies and TV shows and things like that. So that's all I'm going to say about that before I get myself in trouble with our compliance department. Again, if a child has earned income over the summer or even throughout the year, I mentioned over the summer just because the summer is coming to a close, but let's say that they have a part-time job that they work at the hardware store, every Saturday. Well, again, they may have $6,000, and that $6,000 can be put into a Roth IRA. Or if you do give your child or grandchild any kind of cash compensation or cash gifts, typically at birthdays, typically around the holidays, it could be used to fund a Roth IRA with that money, and then again, get them on a good learning track to learning more about investments, and give them some tax-free income in their retirement. That's all I got for today. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, of course, definitely feel free to reach out to us. Thanks so much.